Calculus Kids. This is Dr. Callahan with week 15 Wednesday. How are you guys doing? Welcome to midweek. You guys made it to the first half of the week, so congratulations for that. Go ahead and take a look at the following 3 questions for your warm-up log. Pause the video and answer them. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at your questions for today. So today you guys have two pages of handout, which I'm going to get to in a minute. I would prefer if you guys can go ahead and please bring your Prints and Review book into class, because I'm going to start integrating part of the time for you guys to actually start reading that and looking into that in class. So this is the first page of your question. This is one of the questions that is on your AP Calculus test. It was featured in the 2017 one for question number 3 without a calculator. And let's go ahead and take a look at this then. So I will recommend that you guys go ahead and pause the video and then go over the questions on your own for the next 15 minutes, and then I'll go over it together with you guys. Okay, so question number 1 asks you to find the value f of -6, or a, excuse me, and then f of 5. So given the fact that this graph is graph of f prime, this means you're already looking at it from the perspective of looking at it as a slope. So remember with the f prime graph, anything above the x-axis is going to have a positive, and anything below the x-axis is going to have a negative. In addition to that, when you're looking at the first derivative, this actually gives you the area. So as I'm looking into these shapes right here, I see the first shape is a triangle, and to find the area of this triangle, so I'm just going to put that as area 1, it is 1/2 base times height. So the base value is 1, 2, 3, 4. The height value is 1, 2. So if I plug this into this, base will be 4 times 2, which is 8, half of 8. My area A is going to be 4. So just keep in mind that this area here is going to be 4. So it's nice to have that there. Now let's take a look at the second area. It's this blue triangle. And so the base is 1, 2, 3. The height is 2. And so for triangle 2, the area is 1/2 base times height. So half of 6 is going to give you 3 for area 2. So this is going to be 3. Okay. So then I see that my last area that I need to focus on is going to be this semicircle, and in the question it actually even says that it consists of a semicircle. The graph itself is not f of x, it is f prime. So if I think about a full circle, so area 3, if I think about a full circle, it will be pi r squared. But given the fact that the circle is only half of a circle, it's a semicircle, so it's 1/2 pi r squared. But this is the area of a circle. I need to have the a prime of a semicircle. So if I were to go in and find the derivative of pi r squared, because I'm just going to ignore the constant of 1/2 for now, the derivative of pi r squared is going to be 2 pi r, or I guess it would be 2r pi. But then bringing down the 1/2, so divided by 2, you will then go ahead and cancel that. And then the radius here for the circle is a 2, so it will be 2 pi. So 2 pi is the same thing as having pi plus pi, which gives you 2 pi. And because this is below, this is going to be a negative pi and a negative pi. So your area for the semicircle is -2 pi. Okay, so now that you have all 3 pieces, you are now ready to answer the first question. So for question letter A asks you to find the value of f of -6 and then also f of 5. So before we actually find either, it might be worthwhile to understand that the f of x function is going to look like from here, which is -6, to +2. So x equals -6, x equals +2. It's given to you that f of -2 is equal to 7. So that's the area when x is equal, f is equal to -2. So f of x is going to be f of -2 plus the integral, and it's integral because the graph is a derivative, so opposite of your derivative is going to be the integral, which will give you f of x. So you have to do the integral of that. From -2, because that's where it starts right here, from -2 all the way over to x. And that's going to be f prime of t dt. Okay, so then f of -6 is the first one I'm trying to find. That's going to give me f of -2. And from -2, you want to include from -2 all the way over to -6. So minus the integral from -6 to -2 f prime of x dx. So it's given to you that f of -2 is just 7. But then from -6 to -2 is going to represent this triangle that we found previously to be 4. So then we have 7 minus 4, which is going to equal to 3. And that is your answer for f of -6. We're going to go ahead and continue on with f of 5. Now f of 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's to here. So you're going to include f of -2, but then it's going to be plus the integral from -2 to 5 f prime of x dx. So let's fill in the blank then. F of -2 is going to give you a 7, which is given. And then from -2 to 5, you have the area 3 that we found, which was -2 pi. And then you also have from +2 to 5, this triangle, which was area 2 that we found, and we determined that to be 3. So then altogether, f of 5 is 7 plus 3 is 10 minus 2 pi. And that's your answer for part A. Now, if you answer that question correctly, you will get 3 points, 1 for using the initial condition, which you did with f of x, 1 point if you did f of -6, which we found was 3, and then f of 5, which we found just now as 10 minus 2 pi. So then 3 points altogether. Okay, let's take a look at B then. For B, it says on what interval is the f increasing? Justify your answer. Given the fact that this is the graph of f of 5, remember everything that is above the x-axis is going to be positive, which means the slope is increasing. So we're not going to look at anything that's below the x-axis. And so I have this point right here, and then of course I have these 2 points right there, or these 2 lines. So here I have -6 to -2, +2 to 5. So then you can say something to the effect that f of x is increasing when f prime of x is greater than 0. Then you could put your 3 dots, which means therefore f is increasing between when x value is at -6 or greater than -6 to -2 and in between +2 to +5. And that's how you would answer B. And whenever they say justify your answer, make sure you're writing in sentences with words. All right, so if you went ahead and did that, it's 2 points if you justified your answer. And one thing I just actually noticed right here is that it's in between -6 and -2, and it's actually a solid dot. So you can actually include the equal signs right there to indicate that it's not open, it's indeed closed. It's included. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at part C. So part C says find the absolute minimum value of f on the closed interval of -6 to 5 and justify your answer, which will require you to go ahead and write in words. So that brings us to kind of questioning and coming back to like, what is the absolute minimum value of x? So going back to unit 3, you have to think that the absolute minimum is when f prime of x equals 0 and you find the critical points, okay? So the critical point is when f prime of x equals 0, so the slope is at 0. Well, this right here is the slope, so where are your critical points? Well, that's when the slope is 0. So your critical points are x equals -2 and equals +2. So your critical points, so my critical points are x equals -2 and +2, okay? But in addition, you also have to test your endpoints. Your endpoints in this situation is x equals -6 and x equals +5, because it's very possible that in the snapshot of the graph that your endpoints are also going to be part of the minimum. So in this situation, your endpoints are -6 and x equals +5. The best way to do this, in my opinion, is if you actually just create a table. So here's my table, have x, f of x, and then remember, x is just going to be the points itself. Your f of x is going to be the value. So it's going to be like the height. So you're looking for the highest point and the lowest point. And given the fact that we're looking for the minimum, we're going to be looking for the lowest point. So just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have this. So our critical point in the situation is going to be -6. We're going to have a -2 for the critical point. We're going to have a 2 for the critical point, and then we're going to have a 5 for the critical point. So you're going to just go ahead and find these values. So f of -6 we found before was a 3. F of -2, it's given to me, is a 7. F at 2 is going to give me, you know that this area right here is going to be a -2 pi. So if it's at -2, it's going to be a 7. So at +2, you have to take all of -2, which is 7, include from -2 to +2, which is -2 pi. F of 5 is going to be right here. So looking at f of 5, you are going to be taking the values of 10 minus 2 pi. So now once you have that, what you're going to do is you want to go ahead and grab your calculators and then literally figure out what these numbers are in decimals, because you know that 3 and 7, what they are numerically, but you don't know what the other ones with pi's are going to equal. Okay, so if I do 7 minus 2 times 3.14, I will have a 0.72. Do the same thing with 10 minus 6.28. It's going to give me a 3.72. So looking at this, which one's going to give you the lowest point? It is going to be the 0.72, which is when x is equal to 2. And so to justify your answer, you could say something to the effect of the absolute minimum between -6 to 5 is 0.72 or 7 minus 2 pi when x equals 2. And that's enough justification for that. So then looking at the breakdown of this, your absolute minimum is going to be worth 2 points. If you have x equals 2 and then you provide the justification, you will get the 2 points. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at part D. It says for f double prime of x, a -5, remember double prime is going to be concavity, and f double prime of 3, find the value or explain why it does not exist. Okay, so the graph itself here is showing you slope. If I find the slope of the slope or of the graph showing the slope, that's give me my second derivative. So let's find the slope of this graph showing the slope, which is the second derivative, which indicates concavity. So f of double prime of -5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is when x equals -5. Looking at this point on the graph, you're essentially kind of looking at what is the slope of this graph here. Okay, so I know that this point is going to be 1, 2, -2, 0. So let's go ahead and find the slope of that. So the slope is going to be 0 minus 2 over -2 minus 6, which is a -2 over -8. So it's about a 1 over 4. And since given the fact that this is a negative slope, your slope is a -1/4. I just realized I made a terrible mistake because I forgot to put a double negative there. So then of course my answer is not correct. So -2 right here minus -6, so -2 plus 6, which gives me a positive or negative 2 over 4, which is reduced down to a -1 over 2. So this is my slope, which is also the slope of the graph of the slope, which is just -1/2. So that's your first part. Now, looking at the second part right here, f double prime of 3. So let's find the slope when x equals 3 on the graph. So here's my graph when x equals 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you see how right here it is, you can't really find the slope because it is like non-existent. So given the fact that the slope is non-existent, therefore f double prime of 3 is also going to be non-existent. So this is does not exist, or DNE. Why? Well, because f prime has a sharp turn at x equals 3 and cannot have a slope, or you can say a slope cannot be found. All right, you guys, if you went ahead and answer that question, it is 2 points, 1 for f double prime of -5, 1 for f double prime of 3. All right, so now what I want you guys to do is you are going to take a look at the back of this, which is a student's work. And I want you guys to kind of analyze a student's work, see how they did, and if the student is going to be receiving a 9 out of 9. And then for this um, test, this is actually the student distribution for the exam scores of the May 2017 test. So analyze this, please. All right, you guys, as always, I hope you have a wonderful week, but make sure you guys are working on Albor.io and ensuring that everything is caught up because it is due on Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Take care.